Hey guys, welcome to the Christian Idiot Podcast. Hey, today we're going to jump into some probably pretty controversial stuff, some really important things about the state of the church. We've been co-opted or pulled into this idea that we have to think one of two things about how to reach people with the love of Christ and the gospel. Is there a better way, though? Is there a third way? Is there some alternate path that we can take that's really going to reach people where we don't feel like we got to be trapped or indoctrinated or pulled into one side or the other? So check it out.
Eric, today's, like always, we always say that at the beginning of every episode, today's a really important one, but today's different from some of the other podcasts that we've done. You know, typically on the Christian Idiot Podcast, we're going to talk a lot about questions, but we bring a lot of questions to the table that, I might struggle with as being a Christian for a really long time, kind of almost the premise of the podcast.
Sure.
Me being the idiot, you being the resident guru, polished MDiv master
right.
of all questions.
100%.
But today's a little bit different. I still have obviously a lot of questions to ask, but talking more about the church.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like the Christian church is where we would want it to be. And it's probably been like that for a long time. And
no doubt.
One of the questions I definitely want to get into with you is maybe that's the way it's always been. Has every generation seemed like it's gotten worse and worse and worse? And, I start to wonder, not that it's on purpose, but maybe every generation is right. So, I always think of when the disciples were around, they thought Jesus was coming back like,
pronto.
Hey, yeah. I think like in my lifetime, right? Jesus is coming back. Things are really out of control and getting way out of hand. Well, and then I think every generation, like after that, has probably thought the same thing. And if you talk to Christians now, they're like, oh, things are as bad as they've ever been. I sounded really Minnesotan right there, didn't I? When I did like basically my you betcha. Yeah, that was kind of you betcha. But if, especially like the end times people, they're like, oh, it's getting close. So things can't get much worse. Things can't get much worse. Well, they might be true because every generation you're getting closer to that date, whenever that might be.
Or you might just want to say, because it's so bad, we are saying like Maranatha, come Lord Jesus. Like it's bad. I don't know when you're planning, but if you come soon, that would be better.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you think that? Do you think that every generation is right? Or like every decade we're more right because we're getting closer to the date? Or because we'll talk a lot about like the state of the church, all the things that we see going on. And social media and news outlets have made everything so much more accessible. Yep. So has this always been this bad? We're just hearing about everything. Like if you had the perspective of God, would he go, not a lot's changed in the last 2,000 years.
Yeah.
Has the needle moved just this much, but we think it's moved this much?
That's a great question. Like in some ways, it's always from the scriptures when Paul is writing in all the letters to the different churches, he's got this urgency in everything that he's saying. So it's like something is hanging in the balance. Christ is coming soon. This is so important. Take it seriously. Your life is but a mist that appears for a while and then vanishes. Take this day seriously and bring about the kingdom of God. It matters that much. So there's always this pressing urgency that is just endemic to being a Christian and to what happens in the scriptures. But then you got to say, well, that was 2,000 years ago. So where it's probably should be that much more urgent. Like his coming is that much more near without question. I mean, it's just based on chronology or whatever. That we are closer to it now. And then therefore you can make a pretty solid argument that then we should be even more intensely caring about all this stuff and more active in our faith and taking it more seriously because it is coming closer. But you know what? Like if you look at Matthew 24 and other scriptures, there are birth pains that Jesus says, know the times. So he doesn't just say like, hey, just across the board, you guys just know that this is a pretty important deal. It's urgent. People's lives are at stake here. But he's also saying like, hey, recognize when you hear about more wars, about more famines, more earthquakes, more everything. Climate change, he mentions. No, I'm just kidding. Joking.
I was like, I didn't see that one in there.
Yeah, right. Well,
but a lot of people will tell you it's there probably.
Well, yeah, I'm sure. And so he's saying all these things are signs that it's coming closer, like it's going to happen. Now, if you're a preterist, you would say, no, man, he's just talking about the fall of Jerusalem. But if you're a partial preterist, myself and yourself included,
why don't you tell everybody what that means?
Well, basically, all it means is that a preterist was kind of this idea of saying that the prophecies that Jesus spoke about with the fall that was happening and the sun being darkened and all these things that were taking place in that. Go see Matthew 24. They were saying, no, that all took place in that time period, in that generation. It took place with the fall of Jerusalem, 70 AD. So you can just discount all the rest of it. But partial preterists and I'd say majority of the church will say, no. There's two things happening. Like with every kind of prophetic utterance, there's a locality to that time, and it's happening in time or close to that time. And then there is something that we are supposed to pay attention to that's going to be happening in the future. So there's a dual thing happening at all times there. And so if that's the case, then we should be, if you buy that, then you'd say, well, then therefore these birth pains, these things are happening, these groanings of the earth and the wars and all these conflicts and all that are pointing to Jesus is coming sooner than maybe some people think, or it's happening. It's drawing closer. It could be 1,000 years from now. It could be 10. Who knows? But
10,000 years or 10 years?
I don't know. How old is the earth?
Or next year. Yeah, I know that would be a whole nother debate. Well, I like one of the things that you said is that as Christians should be more attentive, I guess, with like each passing day, because in a sense, each passing day, we're getting closer to the inevitable second coming of Christ or end of the world, whatever you want, like...
Or death.
Yeah, sure. Right. Like, yeah, because that could be for anybody in the next moment, right? Mm-hmm. And it seems like the state of the church, or like maybe like one of the areas and that I guess I'd love to touch on is it seems like we're more distant and out of tune with the urgency that we should be in tune with. It just feels like we're way more self-involved. We're way more worried about I than we or you. And it seems like when we're worried about you or we, it comes from like a very hypocritical, judgmental tone, not an inviting tone. And I mean that like from Christian to Christian and Christian to non-Christian. And I think as Christians, as like a whole, we have a really hard time separating those two. We believe everybody should be in our camp. Therefore, I'm going to talk to everybody the same. And if you have someone that's not a Christian or doesn't follow your faith or believe what you believe, there's like this opposition that happens and no one really talks to each other about it, right? We see that in our political climate. It's crazy. Like you can't typically get two people with opposing views in the political climate in the same room without like wanting to choke each other.
Right.
Like it's rare that they can walk away as friends and be like, man, that was actually a really good discussion, got heated at times. But we're better for it. Like better for having that conversation. We rarely see that. You and I can have that. Not that we're so far on opposite views on everything, but I think that's what's rare about what we're doing here is that, even before this podcast, we went back and forth on different points of views of things and not like my blood pressure probably wasn't raised, even though my tone would change, but we need to have more of that. So why does it seem like does it seem like to you that the church is getting further away from urgency? And why do you think that is?
I think it's like I think we're getting further away from the urgency of the call of the gospel, meaning like, salvation to as many as possible, like bringing people into this place where we say, hey, we're all beggars. I'm a beggar, but I found where the bread is. I want to lead you to that. Or you're thirsty. I'm thirsty. I found where the river of life is. It's not found in like, how great I am or how much knowledge I have or whatever. I've just found the one who is the source of life, Jesus, whatever, pointing people to that. And so there's less of an urgency in a lot of ways, I think, for that. And there's more of an urgency to guard what we have against a world or a culture that we feel is encroaching on our values. And so, which is a very real thing. Like it can be, you see the culture in the world as a Christian, you see it like going further off the rails and you wonder like, what should I do about it? Well, I better defend what I have to some degree or else somebody's just going to take it. And these are the things that are valuable to me and like what they're teaching my kids in school and all that sort of thing. This stuff matters on a day-to-day basis. But there's more of a clutching and a defense of that and more of like, this is more important to me than the gospel's important, and making sure I love people well and I connect with them. That's important. But what's really important to me is that you don't come and take the freedoms that I have or the things that I hold near and dear with all my creature comforts and all of my different, things that I possess that are important to me. So there's an urgency in the church, but I question, what's the urgency geared towards? Like, what are we urgently fighting for? And I think that's one of the things that I think is really important to talk about today is that do we just respond with an emotional response, and we just act in a particular way to defend what we want to defend instead of doing the hard stuff? Instead of doing the hard stuff, everybody can get angry. Oh, I'm mad about the way things are and I want things to change. I want to defend what I have or whatever. But, and so the church is really good at that. We're good at getting angry, but are we good at doing, and I'm talking about myself as well all the time, are we good at doing the hard stuff that says, man, this person over here really bugs me and I can barely have a conversation with them, but Christianity doesn't call me to what's easy. It doesn't give me that option of just doing what I naturally do in my default setting. I have to do something that requires something different of me. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Jesus said, right? In Matthew 5, I think it was. Well,
so isn't that like everything in life? I mean, when you look at like doing the things you don't want to do, you could kind of like put that across, like take the Christian aspect out of it. Like, we just look at people as a whole. They pretty much never do what they don't want to do. You should eat right. Like you should have fruits and vegetables or a balanced diet. You should go into a caloric restriction if that's what's needed for your health, right? People can't do it. Put the cookies away. Don't buy the cookies, the ice cream, whatever.
Yeah.
Go on walks. Be with your family. Go work out. Go exercise. Put the phone down. All these things. We give middle fingers to those types of things, whether you're a Christian or not, because don't tell me what to do, right? I mean, that's kind of that's kind of how it's been. So I don't even I see it as Christians are human that have fallen into that. So it's not like, hey, as Christians, we're called to do and stand against this or do hard things. Just as people.
Yeah.
Do some hard things, right? I think Huberman came out with it, not that when he had Goggins on his show, and, he gave the scientific term for it that I won't try to repeat, about like the part of your brain will grow when you do things that you don't want to do.
Anterior mid-cingulate cortex.
There you go. Yeah. There it is. There's our MDiv giving that. How many times did you have to listen to that to actually nail that down? It was just one time? You heard it once and you're like, got it.
I knew it when it was coming out of his mouth. I'm like, mid-cingulate cortex.
Yeah. Did you?
No.
Did you hit rewind multiple times to be like, I'm getting.
I
don't know when I'm going to need this. It might be in the podcast, but I'm busting it out.
I use it all the time. I use it with people I coach. I use it all the time.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's a really important concept, I think, just for everybody, and
it's woven into who we are.
Right.
Right. If you don't have the pain, you're not going to see the results. No doubt about it. So yeah. So I think it's like God just made it kind of woven into our very chemistry. That this is how you get things. This is how you live something that is distinct and with progress and, actually bringing about change is you do these hard things.
But so like when we think about there's so many different areas that I want to talk about. Like, one of the things I want to talk about is cultural relevancy, and it kind of goes along with what we've been talking about. How much of the church should be concerned with, cause, right? We talk about two camps, and part of the thing that we've been talking about is, I know I said indoctrination. You used a better word for it than co-opted. Is it really that much different?
They're both true, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. But we've had like these two ideas, and I want you to unpack those here in a minute. And then obviously we believe that there could be like a third idea or a third way to do things. I hear people like going along with these two ideas. You have one. So I didn't know this was a big deal until, I don't know, maybe even just up to yesterday. Stephen Furtick wore a pink, it looked like something your grandmother would knit, sweater or whatever. And he actually talked about the sweater, I guess, in a sermon. I didn't listen to it.
Yeah.
So people obviously went, how much did the sweater cost? It was like a $2,000 sweater that he wore, and people were like appalled. Like, what? Hey, why are you wearing a pink sweater on? Not to have anything to do. It's just like, why draw attention to yourself? So like, here I am wearing kind of, I don't know if maybe this is more salmon. I don't care.
Salmon,
I like it.
mauve.
Yeah, mauve. Maybe. So whatever it might be, but don't draw your attention to yourself on the stage.
Yeah. Too late.
Right. So, but anyways, the thing is that just right here you have two camps that are divided. One that's like, maybe I'm like kind of onto the camp of like, who gives a rip what they wear? Right. Like, I'm never really looking at like, they what do they call them? Something about pastors and sneakers or sermons and sneakers. What's that? Do you know what that thing is?
I haven't heard that.
So there's a guy that was like, why are all these preachers and pastors wearing like these Travis Scott off-white Jordans that are like $2,000?
Yeah.
I can't remember what it's called. Someone will probably be able to like write in our comments of what that is. But so we have people that are obsessed with the fact that everybody that speaks on a stage that's a Christian should be very humble in their appearance. So like if someone came up there in rags, dirty shoes, holes in their jeans, not the stylish holes, maybe some holes in their shirt, unshaven, beard, hair's kind of messy, are you listening to them? Or are you distracted by their appearance, not looking the way that you... So it's like, how humble do you need to be? Like, what's that really sweet spot? I always liken it to, I've probably mentioned the Adjustment Bureau another time on the show, but like, where Matt Damon in the movie goes, we paid someone $1,500 to see what the right amount of scuff my shoe should have. It shouldn't be too polished where I discredit the blue collar people, and it shouldn't be too scuffed up where I discredit the business, the rich people or whatever.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of like where we're at in the church. What's the right amount of humble? What's the right amount of...
Well, and then it becomes kind of a style. Yeah, it's interesting. And that plays into the thing of saying, your looks, how much does appearance matter? Okay, so if we put someone in the pulpit, how should they present themselves? Is it too like, whatever, antiquated to say, oh, you got to look a particular way and you have to dress in a particular way and you have to have a suit on or whatever? And then the other thing is like, are you trying too hard to be cool? And by the way, I just want to say, like, Stephen Furtick, man, that brother has really helped me in my life with some of his sermons, and he's done some amazing things with Elevation Church, and the worship is just incredible.
Yeah.
But he also does that thing where he doesn't, like he'll wear a Guns N' Roses shirt. It's like, yeah, I remember Guns N' Roses. Like, oh yeah, and when they came out with their first album in 1987, I was way into it and had but who cares? But I dare anybody right now listening to go ahead and look for 1 in a million Guns N' Roses lyrics. Just do that, and that's it. Game over. And then you'll say, oh. And then Axl Rose didn't even make a true apology about the lyrics. Like, and then you say, well, if you wear something like that and you are going to be talking to millions of people, then you are having a profound influence over them, and they're paying attention to your style points and what you wear and what you basically sign off on and say, this is okay. I listen to this band or I do this particular thing. Now you got to be careful now, because we don't want to get too religious about it, and we don't want to get too stuffy or legalistic. Fair enough. But you also got to be like, yeah, but you know what? Not many of you should presume to be teachers, brothers, because you know that we will be judged at a higher standard in a different way. That's what Paul said.
So you think he's going to get judged in a higher standard for wearing a Guns N' Roses shirt on... so because one of the things is like, why do I wear this jacket? Because I liked it. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Anybody that's listening to this thing that doesn't like the jacket and says, why did Ryan wear that jacket? I don't care. I don't care what you think about what I'm wearing. Maybe there's something wrong with the Grand Canyon that I don't know about. Maybe it was founded by people that did some really awful things, and here you are on the Christian Idiot podcast, rocking your Guns or your Grand Canyon shirt.
Yeah, but I think like it's a different thing. Like if you have like Megan Rapinoe, right? She's the one that was the soccer star for the U.S. and she came out. She's obvious, kind of stands for the LGBTQ community, all that good stuff. And then she also says, she says some controversial things, and she wants better pay for women athletes. All that. So fair enough. She's got some things that she's standing up and she believes, whatever. When you see a figure like that, that's public and they want to have an influence, then you want them to kind of be harmonized in what they believe. There should be an integrity, hopefully, to who they are. Integrity just in terms of this idea of integration. We're well interconnected. We're integrated well so that our message has power. So if Megan says, so I know Megan Rapinoe is going to be one who is sort of the embodiment of a lot of the very liberal, progressive ideas out there. And so she's going to hold to that message. That's her messaging. And she's going to put that forth. Okay, so we get her. And then she also comes out later and she says, NWA is like one of my favorite bands. Okay, Megan, go ahead and listen to the last album they did, the one without Ice Cube, and then I want you to look at those lyrics, and I want you to talk about those. You want to talk about misogyny? You want to talk about like some of the worst stuff that's probably ever been put down lyrically, and some of the most probably arguably satanic lyrics you'll ever see that
like
would rival anything.
Towards women type of thing is
what not just derogatory. Like To Kill a Hooker and everything else. Like that's NWA. That's our beloved Dr. Dre. That's our beloved Ice Cube that we love. He's so funny in Friday. It's like, I love that guy. That's the guy. And so I'm talking about integrity with what you embody with a message. So if you have a Furtick, that's on another level, because now it's like this guy, and I love the brother. He can bring it, but now you represent gospel in Christ. So how does your life look any different than a Megan Rapinoe or anybody else when it's enough where we should hold them to a particular ideal where we should say you should be at least harmonized with what you believe and have a particular integrity of who you are, or else we think that you're two-faced and you're a fraud and we don't even believe what you're saying half the time. But it's on another level if you're going to bring the word of God. Because now if you go around, you say, like, check it out, man, like I got my Guns N' Roses thing and I do my thing or whatever, haha, isn't that cool? Like these rock t-shirts, you remember rock t-shirts? It's great. Yeah, bro, pick something else, because now you're saying I'm basically affirming or signing off on this particular thing. Now, you might not think that, but you have that kind of influence. You have a powerful influence. What will you do with your influence? So God holds us to a different standard, but the church doesn't. So many in the church don't do that anymore. Now what the church does is they just simply say, like, I don't know, like, will more people like me if I do this? James River Conference, if we start off with the monster trucks for all the men, because we know, like, men and their testosterone, they're going to love monster trucks. And then we're going to get this guy who's from, American...
Wait on that, because I want to talk about that. Yeah, I want to interrupt. I don't want to get off this topic. So Stephen Furtick should be wearing a white T-shirt, is what you're saying.
He can wear whatever he wants, but what I'm saying is that just be a little bit more cautious. I mean, he does this too. He's willy-nilly about who he brings as guest speakers a lot. He does a lot of stuff. He takes risks, and some of them are boneheaded, and some of them are like awesome, in my humble opinion. Like they make sense or whatever. Again, I have a lot of respect for him. I appreciate him. He's ministered to me personally. Not personally.
So let me ask you this though. When you talk about, okay, so like the thing with the T-shirt, I can get that. Like I can understand that point. I strongly doubt that the vast majority of the people think of it on the level that you think of. I think the point that you're making, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, is is that you need to think about this more carefully than you're thinking about it. A, person that's preaching, and B, congregation, and C, probably elders of the church. Like, and that's another thing that we'll talk about, because I really want to talk about what seems like the compromising nature. And so, like, is a T-shirt the beginning? Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, I'm being kind of silly.
But slippery slope.
Right. I mean, but is it like just a T-shirt? It's just a band. Okay, well, how extreme would it get? If he wore a Lil Nas X shirt up there, would that be...
Right,
is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
You know, is... who's that, Ice Spice or whatever her name is, that throws up the devil sign, and those types of things. No, that's too far. Mm-hmm. Guns N' Roses, old 80s, 90s band, totally fine. Same thing with like an NWA. Probably why she says I really liked NWA.
She's doing that because she's like, black community, do you like me?
Well, sure.
Was that liberal?
Yeah, I mean, and I wonder, like, can you actually rap a song? Right, there's a fake thing. Stephen Furtick, maybe he rocked Guns N' Roses as a kid.
Probably did.
Saw that $10 shirt at Target and goes,
I'm going to wear it when I preach.
I'm going to, or whatever. And probably some of that is cultural conformity. And those are, that's like probably my number one reason of why I think churches compromise, is because they need to stay culturally relevant to reach kids. So, would you rather see, this is just a little side thing that I was thinking of while you were talking, would you rather see Stephen Furtick in a $5,000 Armani suit or a Guns N' Roses t-shirt? Is one any better than the other?
That's good. That's solid. Yeah, great question. Well, I think most people are not going to know it's a $5,000 suit. And most people are not going to be paying attention to that as much as they're going to be paying attention to something like a band or something like that.
A lot of people might not know who Guns N' Roses are. People might not know.
It's true. And hey, listen, and credit where credit's due. Like, one of the things that Elevation does, if you notice about all of the women that sing in their groups, they never wear stuff that's skin tight, ever. And you see that in a lot of churches now, where women are happy to wear, and I used to play drums for a church back in Phoenix, where the women would be dressed in like stilettos and super tight jeans and like the whole tops and everything, like, just kicking it with what they're wearing, because they're like, hey, this is what people are wearing. I think I look good in it. I look sexy, if I'm just going to be honest with you. It feels great. But Furtick doesn't allow that. Like, they actually wear like super frumpy clothes, so I want to give credit where credit's due. I just think that it plays into a bigger argument, or plays into a bigger discussion piece of saying, what do we embrace, and where's our standard? Like, what is our standard? What is our value? And that's
right, because you step into like this really scary spot. And what I mean by that is like, now all of a sudden we need to outline exactly. It almost goes back, 50 years ago. I'll give you an example. So we were going into church, and if you see me, I wear a hat 99% of my, like, even when I'm alone in my office working, I probably have a hat on with nobody around. I just like hats. Got a million different, well, not maybe a million, but probably 15 to 20 just different hats. So really not really far from a million. But anyway, I always wear a hat, even to church. And that would probably bother a lot of people, including my wife. She goes, we were going to church the other day, and we're getting ready for church, and she goes, nobody else wears a hat at church. And I was like, same
thing at our church. Nobody does.
Yeah. And I was like, no, they do. They wear hats. You're not noticing them. So I didn't wear a hat that day. Part of it really is I hate fixing my hair. I hate the whole process of it. Super inefficient. Let me put on, a hoodie,
just
a hat.
Quick. It's quick.
It's who I am, and let me rock, because I'm not like...
I did that last Sunday.
Disrespecting anybody by wearing a hat. I mean, maybe you can explain how it might be disrespectful.
You have no idea.
But, so the funny part was when we got there, it must have been wear your hat to church day. Because we went to the worship leader. He didn't wear a hat when he wasn't actually leading worship that day. He was just doing sound, wearing a hat. Other pastors wearing a hat. And I was like, that guy's wearing a hat. 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 But it's like this thing is like, you shouldn't wear a hat to church. You shouldn't wear shorts. I've heard other people say you can't wear shorts to church, right? So you get in all these like, you can't wear a hat, must wear your Sunday best, and you have to dress a certain way to look at it. So now it's almost like, no, the proper way for a pastor to dress is to wear a plain white t-shirt, very humble pants from Gap, and some sneakers from Walmart. There you are. Now you're the nice, perfect, don't be yourself. Don't wear a style that you want to wear. Don't wear the pink sweater because it's drawing too much attention. You can't wear the Jordans even though you bought those from your salary, from a book you wrote. Maybe it's not even from the church. It feels like I have control over you because I tithe. You know, it's like when you hear these really obnoxious people that just video record cops for like I got you moments, and they like roll their window down a crack and they're like, I'm not going to talk to you. I don't answer questions. What did I get pulled over for? And, you know, they're just on, and they're recording themselves. It's all for that. And that's kind of like I see those, like I lost my train of thought a little bit, but I see those like similarities in how we're doing these things. But they say, this is what I was going to say. They're like, I pay your salary, so I don't need to like listen to you. And I kind of seem that like with congregants in church, you need to appear this way for me right now. Because I give, like, because we give to a church or to an organization.
Really?
We feel like we have, well, I think it's like unwritten. I think it's like a subconscious thing. I mean, I guess, you know, I think you bring up some really good points on the Guns N' Roses stuff and, right, the lyrics to songs that don't bear a Christian value. I'm not saying anything that doesn't hold water, but you do get into this, like, slippery slope on both ends. One, how do you stay out of legalism? And then two, where are the elders of the church going, hey, love you, brother. Like what you just said, you bring so much value to our lives, but you missed it here.
Yeah.
Like you shouldn't have worn that.
Right.
You brought too much attention to yourself. And that's not what we're here for. This isn't the, you know, I'll quit saying Stephen Furtick, but you know, it's not the Eric Hoffmeister show, right? It's not the Ryan McGinnis show. It's not the Stephen Furtick show. It's this, we're here to worship God, and we're here to listen to a word that you supposedly got from God to us. But we're so focused on your clothes, we've missed your message, and all that time that you wasted putting this together.
It's tough, man, and because immediately, even when I say it, there's going to be so many people that would want to jump down my throat on it because they're going to say like, "Oh, he's just the legalist guy," you know. And it's like, and it's the old. I mean, this goes back in the church forever. Legalism versus antinomianism. It's the same thing. It's like these two camps that just battle each other, and that's what we're doing right now. Yeah, not united.
Well, can you eat meat that's been sacrificed to idols, right?
Exactly.
Like the thing that they talked about.
And Paul's like, hey, you know, like I can eat anything I find in the market, but then he says, and I can do it with a clear conscience. That's me. Not everybody's going to be able to do that. Paul says that. Then what does he say after that?
If it makes a brother stumble.
Exactly. But if it makes a brother stumble, then I'm not going to do it. Because at the end of the day, what do I care about? Not that, I'm so hungry, I want my meat. He's saying, at the end of the day, man, I care about my bro. And if this brother over here, if I'm causing him to stumble, I got to do something about that.
So it goes back into the, are you saying that's basically more selfish? It's more of a selfish thought.
There you go.
Than it is like, where if you look at Paul, where he was more like this, saying, I'll give up anything if it causes my brother to stumble.
Yeah.
Instead of like now in today's terms, it seems like I am who I am, right? I am this person. This is who I am. Ryan wears hats, so therefore I'm wearing a hat to church. Maybe there's an old man sitting next to me that's like grumbling because I'm these young. I'm not young, but I like for them to call me young. These young punks coming in here with their hats and their shorts. What are they? You know, like it's like dishonoring to God. Maybe that's something that I should think about. But for more or less, I mean, I think that we need to have more of an outward. Like where do you differentiate being yourself? And maybe that's the line. Is it going to cause my brother to stumble, or it has the potential to cause my brother to stumble? Therefore, I won't do it. And we probably see that not just, you know, in the Christian world, is like we see it all the time. No, this is what I want to do. This is me. This is who I am. This is, or you know, like when we go back to what you were saying, do things that are hard. That means you need to do things that you don't inherently want to do. So you can't fall back on, this is who I am, right? How many times have you heard that in your life of people that you've talked to? This is Eric.
Yeah.
It's just who I am.
And that's...
Well, maybe who you are needs to change.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think that's what we encounter in culture, is that the highest good in American culture, I'm not going to speak for any other culture, just American culture, from what I grew up in, what I know. The highest good is that I can express myself any way that I want to and be as free as possible without anybody getting hurt. Something like that. That's basically kind of, that's the ethos that we live by in America. And so when you see that adopted by the church, then that can become a problem, because then it's like, don't tread on me. This is what I do. This is what I want. And whatever. Instead of saying, like, my whole thing right now is to be an ambassador of Christ. And so to own that individually means, like, what does that mean for me to be an ambassador of Christ to this person right now? What does it mean for me to be the aroma of Christ to those who are perishing, or to be the fragrance of Christ to these people? It might mean that I have to do certain things that make me uncomfortable, that I don't want to do, that certain appropriations I need to make to my whole thing in order to actually bless these people and help them. But I think that...
So can a Christian wear Guns N' Roses shirt? Not a preacher? Not someone that's up? Can I
that's
wear
pretty dangerous territory.
a Guns N' Roses shirt to church, just sitting in the congregation, or is that a no-no?
You know what's funny? Well... Yeah, no, it's totally a personal conviction thing. I remember when I first started going to a church and was born again when I was 16.
Shirts.
Which one?
Your Big Johnson shirts.
Big John? No.
You remember those? How inappropriate. People got sent home from school for like. For those.
I never had that.
Here I am, ready to lead worship. Hey, Eric.
Oh man. Do you have an idea?
Your NWA lyrics on your shirt?
No, but I had a Rush shirt on. I remember I had a Rush shirt, and this guy came up to me and said, "Do you have any idea what some of the symbolism on Rush albums actually means?" And he like really was talking to me, and he was another musician, so I was like, "Oh."
How much does that matter? Symbolism?
No, well, I mean,
give it like break. I mean, like seriously, like, is there like an embedded? This like when that thing was created, you know what we're gonna do? We're going to make this thing, and we're going to sneak in Satan over here, and we're going to do this thing here. Or was something created that looked cool to the band, and someone came along and go, Satan's there. Oh, you got like this thing here that looks like a 1 or a 6, and then this one looks like a 6, and then see how they tweak this over here if you turn it just like...
The Monster drink or whatever.
Yeah. My goodness, the Monster drink. Yeah. I can't even watch that.
No, it's
and
terrible.
That's part of the reason why people don't want to be in the Christian camp.
Yeah,
is because
we're crazy.
Because of like the symbolism. Like if you haven't seen, like, people need to go look at and watch that Monster Can video. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe that lady is so in tune with something that I'm not in tune with. But that's like some of the most ridiculous stuff.
Yeah,
that where people are like, man, Jesus, John 14:6 is right. It's the way, the truth, and the life, and no one come to the Father except through him. But I don't want to be associated with that lady.
Right.
I don't want to be in that camp. And so...
That's why you have ex-evangelicals instead of evangelicals now. So many people are like, I'm no longer an evangelical.
Yeah.
Myself included. Although I wouldn't put myself into the camp that is ex-evangelical. Because that's a whole nother thing right
you're
there.
You're in purgatory? You're sitting in the in-between
evangelical purgatory. Yeah,
you're just evangelical.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I'm just in this camp.
I'm just gelling.
But I mean, but one of the points that you bring up and some of the things that we're talking about, it gets so dang complicated. And should it be this complicated to be a Christian? Like, no, you can't wear that T-shirt. No, you can't wear those pants. The Monster Can doesn't matter. No, the Monster Can. The Monster Can matters. This music is okay. This music isn't. Like, one day Lecrae's okay, one day Lecrae isn't okay. Mm-hmm. Or Lecrae's okay, and then, but watch out for Maverick City because they had someone that on their team that did something inappropriate. I don't even, or what, I'm just making stuff up. Yeah. Or don't do this or don't do that. And it's just like you're jumping from one foot to the next to try to please the Christian community. And it gets really exhausting.
Yeah.
So at what point can I authentically be myself? When I say authentically be myself is like, I like Maverick City. right?
Yeah,
or whatever. Or
love them.
I like Lecrae. You know, like Lecrae was, when I became a Christian, I thought one of the reasons, like I remember having this conversation, I think with my parents, was like, I don't think I can be a Christian. This is so shallow because of the music. I'm so tired of this, like, I don't want to say DC Talk is corny, but at the time to me, it was corny. You know, like Jesus Freak and some of these other ones. Like I just did, that wasn't my, you know, like I was listening to Nas and Jay-Z and Fabulous. And I actually think, you know, we had a local bookstore that was like, where you could type in an artist that you liked and they would bring up somebody else. And I'm sure Lecrae would have been brought up for any rapper that you put in there. But I typed in Fabulous because I think that's who I liked the most at the time. And then Lecrae popped up. And I just remember at the time, and I think it was like after the Music Stops album, I was like, no, like I couldn't remember when I bought the CD immediately, and then I bought like other things that he was on, or like other things that he might have, like Sho Baraka and Tadashi and Trip Lee and like basically everybody that he was associated with at the time. That like was a profound moment for me, that I finally found music that was good, that was representing the gospel, solid believer. And so, but there are people out there, you know, just because, like, you know, this Lecrae's been pretty public about like some of his pitfalls, or, you know, just going through life. And you got to do it in the public eye. Now you got to do it in the public Christian eye, which everybody's got their fingers pointed. You did this wrong. You did this wrong, or you were great on Anomaly, but then this other album sucks. And we just become such judgmental people about like where people walk in their life. And I'm just like, I was thinking like, man, this guy like saved, for me, like music at the time, and like introduced me to a world that I didn't, you know, really realize. So my whole point in that is if he doesn't, like, I'm just speaking musically, but if he doesn't come out and say, this is actually who I am, and he says this a million times. I didn't mean this to be a Lecrae thing, but I'm a Christian who raps. Therefore, my lyrics come out of what I believe, what I live, who I am, and who I am is whose I am, right? You don't know, you're right. Like he belongs to Jesus. And so then that's what comes out in his lyrics, but everybody puts him in, you're a Christian rap artist. No, I'm a Christian who's a rapper, and there is a difference. But if he didn't come out and make that stand of saying, this is who I am, this is the influences that I've had, Pac, Biggie, Jay-Z, you know, probably, you know, a lot of like other sides of things, where he didn't care. And it was the right move. And it was the right move that did a lot for a lot of people. So it's like, I feel like in our culture, we're tiptoeing on those, like, what area can I belong into, and whose feathers am I going to ruffle? And is it okay to ruffle your feathers, but not your feathers? And so is it okay to wear this t-shirt? Is it not? So I just feel like we're walking on eggshells as Christians, and we really don't know so is it the person's fault, or is it the Christian's fault? Have we put ourselves in too many compromising positions? So like here's camp one, like we put ourselves in too many compromising positions where we don't know what the standard is anymore. So just do you. Wear the Guns N' Roses t-shirt, wear the white t-shirt, wear the $5,000 suit, whatever you feel like is, wear your hat to church on Sunday. That's fine. So that's like one camp that we get into. And then, or there's another camp like, no, we should have had these values, and I'm holding fast to these values, and this is what it should have always been, and it should have never changed. And so it's like, at some point you just like, I'm exhausted.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's about how we embrace people. I think that's the bottom line, is that come as you are, wherever you are, wear whatever you want within reason, right? But like you show up and just be who you are, where you're at. So you never have to feel like you have to jump through hoops or present yourself in a particular way before you're good enough to enter my church, or you're worthy enough to have a conversation with, or whatever. That's all absolute garbage. Is that
who Stephen Furtick is talking to? I'm up here wearing this to let you know that you should come as you are. So there was this fine balance of cultural relevance. And I know we've just been we probably need to move on from this topic in particular, but I think it's really important to say, hey, you don't have to be in a box.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter where you are, where you've come from, what you've done. You're exactly where you belong. And I'm willing to offend my Christian brothers and sisters that say, I can't wear this shirt, so you know it's okay that you can come as you are. And is that his stance? And is he wrong?
Could be. No, like, yeah, that could be part of it. That could be part of it. He's hyper meticulous about what he wears, when he wears it, how he wears it. You know, absolutely. Everything down to how he accentuates his physique, everything. His hair, just like absolutely perfect, the fade, everything. He's like to a T. So nothing is by accident with him, that's for sure. He's got a wardrobe person, I'm sure. He's got the whole nine. Now, maybe that's exactly what is needed, because he's saying, I want to make sure that... So in some ways, we're all coming from the same place. He's saying, I'm going to try to influence people with everything that I bring right now. My tone of voice, the topics that I choose, the stories that I share, the wardrobe that I rock, everything down to a T. So he knows exactly what he's doing, but maybe it's like all for the good. Maybe he's doing exactly what you said, where he's like, I think I can reach more people versus the amount of people that I offend, and if I offend them, I don't need them. And that could be, that's a good argument. It
right.
might
So,
be.
but so then, like, what example do you want to be? Is there are people that are like, hey, I need to, like, I look at a Francis Chan. I think Francis Chan preaches some of the most dynamic messages, because I really believe he's seeking God and the Holy Spirit
100%.
for when or before he preaches. And I feel like the Spirit flows. So I'm not saying that doesn't happen for Furtick or, you know, Greg Crochelle or whoever the other people that you know, the other big pastors out there. I'm not saying that, but he's a guy that'll probably wear just a white T-shirt.
Yeah,
he's a guy
always.
that will wear unassuming Adidas shoes and
totally
probably
nondescript.
Yeah, it's not about me. I don't care. And he'll come with a very hard-hitting message that'll move you to the core of who you are.
Yeah.
So I see, and I'm not trying to, here I am putting people probably in camps. It's just like, is there someone for everybody? Is Stephen Furtick he can go deep, and he's really smart, and he's very intelligent.
Yeah.
So like, is he your starter church? And Francis Chan is like your, as you start eating meat, you do that. You know, so I don't know if there's like
Joel Osteen maybe as a starter.
Or sure, I mean maybe, yeah, maybe like a really, if you
start
started
with a real
like the
positive
universalist
message, like accept myself, positive, approach this thing, let's wait on the cross, type of thing. I don't know, maybe. Like, well, I mean, that's another story, but
I'm not going to say this person's name, but one of the things that, you know, like we're going to talk about this person here very soon anyway. But you talk to someone that's an apologist that everybody knows, and you talk to this person, and you're talking to him about open theism versus Calvinism versus Arminianism. Maybe it was just Calvinism, Arminianism, because he asked you if John Wesley and John Calvin are in heaven. I'm paraphrasing. You could probably tell the story better. And like, I think you were going back and forth on like their two beliefs. And then he stopped you and said, do you believe that they're both in heaven? And I think your response was yes. And then his response to you was, so what does it matter? So all the stuff that we've been talking about for the last 40 minutes, does it actually matter from a, like, when we talk about eternal destiny? Does the Guns N' Roses shirt actually matter? Does the $5,000 suit actually matter? Does the white T-shirt actually matter? Or is the moral compass of that human and what they're practicing in their day-to-day life and how they're operating their church, is that what matters more than the T-shirt? And man, I think that Christians are way too hung up on the superficial things because they have superficial faith. They're more concerned about sneakers. They're more concerned about the pink $2,000 sweater. They're more concerned about the Guns N' Roses shirt than they are what's coming out of that man's mouth. Is this someone that I want to follow? Or is Elevation Church, or is Life Church, or is whatever church, Grace Church, whatever, you know, I'm just making up churches' names. Am I actually learning, growing, and following what my pastor is saying?
yeah,
To me, I think people need to take a step back that are hung up on these things and they need to go, how deep is my faith? Is it 2 inches deep, or is it 5,000 feet deep? Because in my and you know, there might be a correction. Obviously, it's like you can't have a free for all. I do think there is limitations to what should be worn.
Right.
And I think you brought a lot of great points up, but I feel like if your faith is so superficial that you're getting hung up on a T-shirt versus the words that are coming, because what's probably happening is you're going to church on Sunday and you're listening to that message that you heard a quarter of because your mind was wandering. You're thinking about what you're going to do after church. Wonder if my kids are okay in Sunday school class. What's happening tomorrow? All these types of things are going through your mind. So really, at the end of the day, by the time you get, well, it doesn't even matter. What is it? Is it like any message that you hear? So for instance, people that are listening to this podcast, as soon as this podcast is over, it's something like 60 or 80% of what we said, they'll forget. Because what are they doing? Because right now they're scrolling through a reel. Maybe we put a reel up. Cool, I got that 60 seconds. That was cool. Ha ha, look at that cat. Ha ha, look at this. Or look at what that person said. And in a minute, you've forgotten that you just watched this Christian Idiot reel that was like, oh man, that was really good. So that happens on Sunday. So by the time you get to your car, you've already forgotten what your pastor says. You listen to your favorite podcast on Monday and Tuesday. You have been in your devotional all week. You know, so you got all these, you got the news telling you one thing or wherever you're getting your news from. And then you've got another pastor that you listen to online. You've got your small group on Saturday. And so by the time you actually get back to Sunday, this pastor that you're judging or the pastor that you're supposedly following, you have nothing to that pastor. You have like no bond. You've probably never talked to them. Probably don't know what they're about. Probably have no relationship with them or anybody on the worship team. But we're so quick to step back and make all these assumptions and get caught up on things that really don't have eternal destiny. So what, from that standpoint, I just think that we're missing the mark.
So yeah, and it's Twitterverse, you know. I mean, it's everything negative happens on Twitter. You know, it's kind of that thing of how can I look and judge this person or whatever. And if the church is known for that, then it's going to be a problem. If we get caught up in a T-shirt and things like that, absolutely 100%. But I think that there is something to pay attention to in terms of compromise. Because the idea is that as the more and more we feel that we have to make accommodations that crosses certain lines in order to reach people, it can become a slippery slope. You have to be culturally relevant to a degree. You have to understand where you are. You have to know your context. And to be able to, like, if you're going to go do a trip overseas, you have to learn about the culture that you're going to go and talk to and what are their traditions and what are their mores and all that sort of thing. And then you're going to be able to speak to them better. Paul did the same thing when he said, I notice you have a temple to an unknown God. Let's have a conversation about that. He didn't just start going in there and just bashing the idols down. He understood the context. So there is that is incredibly important in order to be relevant to a degree where you can influence. You need to say, okay, how can I understand the culture that I'm in? But then there's the hypersyncretism where you begin to acquiesce to everything in fear that your message won't get across unless you tell them, pat them on the back, tell them everything's okay, celebrate what they celebrate, and make accommodations for that. That's a problem. That's where it goes deeper. Like the stuff that we've been talking about is sort of like low-hanging fruit. It's kind of basic. Like, yeah, that can be problematic. But we got to get into some of the deeper stuff.
Sure, let's do that. Because do you think, so it's cultural relevance. So I put together like a list and we kind of went over of, you know, maybe top 10 reasons of why churches start to compromise or go down the slippery slope. List. It is a big list. I won't go over all 10 of them, but the number one is cultural conformity.
Okay.
And then fear of offense, desire for growth. I think you have like the top three are probably like, so cultural conformity, fear of offense, and desire for growth. That's typically like what I think, those are probably like your top three reasons of where churches start to compromise. Hey, should I wear this Guns N' Roses shirt? Maybe not. Who's the guy in Florida that was going through those revivals that was like tackling
Todd Bentley?
Todd Bentley.
Yeah.
And Man, I mean, that's a bad one. I mean, we'll get into the strippers at church and the whole Mark Driscoll thing, and I think those are things that we need to talk about. The Mike Bickle thing that's happening, or that just recently happened down at IHOP. Those are, so I believe at some level, right? So when we talk about like Todd Bentley, I think like, didn't he kick a baby because he heard like Smith Wigglesworth did that, or
kicked a guy with stage 4 cancer?
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah, how'd that go?
He didn't get healed.
Yeah, right. And the guy had a stomach ache and
probably nearly hemorrhaged and everything else. Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to do this. That's what he said.
Is that what he did?
Yeah, and then he ran at him.
Just unbelievable. And you know what? And probably this is the other reason why people don't want to be involved in Christian camps. How many people did we know that were hosting revivals, revival vision parties or watch parties? We're going to Florida to see Todd Bentley.
That's where God is. That's what they said.
Right. Yeah, we got it. And this guy's like, how isn't someone standing up going, dude, you just kicked somebody with stage 4 cancer?
Yeah, and then you had
what is wrong with you?
And the big guns of the charismatic church, Bill Johnson being one of them, went up and stood up for him and said, no, he's a good dude. We need what he has. And then shortly thereafter, Todd Bentley had a major moral collapse with his marriage and his ministry right after that. So Bill Johnson...
And we're just doing this as he's kicking people and tackling people instead of going...
Because that's the thing. It's like there people like Bill Johnson, a lot of great stuff has come out of what he's done in ministry, but then they go so far in these other directions of supporting and celebrating these things it's crazy. It's crazy. Nobody can take them seriously except for unless you're in that club, unless you're in that particular movement or whatever, then it is. But the witness is tarnished. I think that's the big thing, is that we got to ask ourselves is like, what does it mean to be a witness? Maybe you don't want to be a witness. If you don't want to be a witness, that's okay. You're just not a Christian.
Right.
If you want to be a witness, you have to pay attention to your life. I have to pay attention to my life. Like, I'll tell you what, man, I'm 50. When I was in my 20s, and I went to my first born again church when I was 16, 17 years old. I was vomiting all over people, everything about hell and everything else all the time, because I'm like, I know the truth. And I was probably incorrigible and annoying, and everybody wanted to just be, get away from this guy.
Who's that Eric guy?
Yeah, definitely my family. No question about it. They thought I lost my mind, and they showed up at the church.
They'll think you're crazy. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, they showed up at my church and all that sort of thing. So the problem is that, like, okay, you got zeal, but you got no knowledge. You got zeal, but you don't care about the people that you're trying to actually affect positively. And that's the self-centeredness of the church today. Is so much of it is that I don't care. So you have we have different camps going on, but you certainly have that camp that says, we're just going to be what we want to be. We don't care. You're going to have to deal with it. And if I offend you, But what is your witness? What is your witness? What is it, people that otherwise they think you're crazy? And we're not going to get into Trump, but we could. And that's the whole thing with the politics of it. If the church embraces Trump, then you have to realize that people are going to look at you and say, oh, that's your guy, then I look at you in the same way. That just happens. Are we okay with that? Well, then be careful who you celebrate and who you talk about all the time, and so on and so forth. We have to say to ourselves, like, look, time is short, and our time on this planet is like a breath. What's our witness? Like, what are we doing? That's why you have... And then you have the other side of that, right? Where you have people that just wholesale will embrace what culture is. That's why you have the United Church of Christ and United Methodists and now the Presbyterian USA and Episcopal and everything will say, let's put a pride flag and a rainbow flag at the altar. Not just on a sign leading into the church. We're going to put it in the center of the altar, which I just saw the other day firsthand. Because they're saying like, hey, whatever... we can do. Don't worry about any of that stuff that's uncomfortable in the Bible. We don't even have to talk about it. Just when you come through our doors, it's another form of compromise where we say, so you got to, we have to, there has to be revolution. And we have to have some solutions with it. We got to talk about why, but we have to be able to not be that holy camp that just is the crazy people over here. There's just the noisy gong, the clanging cymbal. And then we also can't be that other camp that just says, I'll just embrace whatever you embrace. I don't even care. It doesn't matter. It's all love. It's all love. It's all love.
It's that balance of like, you can't be so culturally relevant where, you know, or what is it? You can't be so, man, there's a saying for it. Like, can't be so earthly or worldly that you're no spiritually good.
So
and you can't be so
that you're
spiritual
no
that you're no earthly good, right?
Yeah, right.
Because if people just think you're out of your mind, you're the one that's dissecting a monster can and calling it evil. You've just, about 99% of the population's going, you're a out there weirdo that I'm probably not going to listen to. Mm-hmm. If you're kicking people with stage 4 cancer and trying to heal them, people are probably going, yep, not following that guy.
Right.
And so then I think we're looking, like, when we look at, they all come down to, like, it seems like a desire for growth. And your desire for growth is greater than your desire of surrender. And I think that's really what we come into. And I go back to Francis Chan, because Francis Chan, and you look at Mark Driscoll, and I want to talk about him too. Mark Driscoll hammered Chan for giving up his mega church. Mm-hmm. And he's like, what are you, crazy? This is what pastors live. Like, you really saw the heart of Mark Driscoll at that time. I don't know if he's this way now. But he's like, are you nuts? This is what we live for. We live to have the mega church. And Francis Chan's going, man, you don't, I mean, he didn't say it, but you could just read it on his face where he's like, you don't get it, brother.
I don't get it. No.
Because your desire for growth is way greater than your desire for surrender. And I'm more concerned about following where God is leading me than I'm about hanging on to what God has grown. Like, okay, great. God used me in this moment, in the season, to grow this thing. And I don't care if it means that I'm going to be an evangelist in Hong Kong or I'm going to another church in a small town. Man, I just want to go where God is and where God's leading me to be. So I'll leave this city without turning around because this is where, and honestly, I think that's where everybody, it's like, loses their way. They don't start that way. Todd Bentley didn't start kicking people. The Manna people didn't probably start, putting saltine crackers in their Bible. I'm sure a miracle happened. I'm sure a move of God actually happened at some point, but we had to hang on to it. We had to hang on to the growth. We had to, like, where's this thing going? Where's this pride, this attention, all this stuff? And so now I'm going to compromise beliefs and values and things that I used to stand for because my desire for growth is so much more than my desire to surrender and to follow and to be humble. And I think that's what we lose sight of in that I think that's probably where our compromise comes in. And that's where you can start to see where the elders of the church conform to what the leader of the church is doing. You would think instead of Bill Johnson standing up and saying, hey, this is actually okay, like, he's a good guy, he's fine, maybe, we stood up and rebuked him the way that Paul rebuked Peter.
Peter, yeah.
And so the same thing, like, I don't know the name of the church, and you know this way better than I do. I just saw, like, a little clip on the Mark Driscoll thing. But so here we have, get me if I'm wrong, and maybe you should just tell the story, but you have a male stripper from Las Vegas performing in front of a church conference.
Well, he was on America's Got Talent, I think it was, and he won. I think he was formerly an exotic dancer, but then what he did was he kind of now is doing things where he's doing this sort of acrobatic stuff.
Did he strip on stage,
so
though?
He started off, and the poll is, this is for a men's conference at the James River Men's Conference, right? They do this every year. They kicked off the event with like a monster truck thing or whatever. They're trying to be like, yeah, just make it
like
real
manly stuff.
Yeah,
like John Eldridge. Let's go out to. You're not a man.
Don't bring John Eldridge.
You're not a man if you don't go out to the wilderness and kill a moose with your bare hands.
Eldridge is a different deal.
Bite into the side of a piece of snow. I know. I'm not putting it.
Okay,
but there is that standard of like the Home Improvement grunting.
Yeah. This is what, like, okay, this must be what men want, or
dude.
Whatever.
I don't like monster trucks are cool, but I'm not going to a monster truck show.
No, not at all. But yeah, and
where did that get associated with?
I don't know. I mean, the only thing that I'm happy about is they're actually, like, there's so much beta male stuff happening versus alpha male today that it's gone
but
so
is
far in the other
Monster Truck
direction.
alpha male?
No, I don't know what it is. It just should be probably not around
You're
at all.
not a man if you don't go to Monster Truck
But then what's
shows.
so weird is that, but then he does a thing that's like some weird homoerotic thing by having this guy on a pole. So he starts off and he's got this big pole, and then the guy
did you
goes,
watch the performance?
yeah, it's a video that is like it's several times. No, not at all. No.
Got that on repeat.
So he rips off his shirt, like he starts off and then it goes, whew, and it's like, and he's all ripped, and then he's got the leather pants or whatever. And I'm sure these dudes already in the conference are like, yo, like what? I'm here to like learn about God and become a better man. And then you got this like stripper guy. And then he goes and he does this thing. It's like Cirque du Soleil stuff. And he climbs a pole and he does some interesting things. And then he puts a sword when he's at the top of the thing, the pole, wherever. Then he puts a sword down his mouth. And like, it's really off. Like, and it's just messed up. Well, Driscoll.
Well, hold on a second. Can I just ask you before Driscoll?
Please.
If he didn't rip his Guns N' Roses shirt off.
Yeah, right.
If he didn't rip that off, would it? But I mean, all honesty, if he'd kept his clothes on or kept his shirt on, was he just he was in leather pants? Is that? Oh, so let's just say this: he wasn't a male. I know he was a male stripper, so I'm not trying to there's a lot of what ifs. Is the act of a guy doing? So he wasn't stripping on a pole. Like that's kind of like how. I'm not saying this is right, just so I'm not. But like in my mind of like how it was presented to me, was like you kind of had a guy who was a male stripper who like I thought he like got down into like some little skimpy shorts or whatever and was doing provocative pole dancing things.
Yeah,
but this seems more like
it's the next best thing. Whatever.
Yeah, maybe a lesser of two. But if he kept his shirt, if he kept his clothes on, or he was wearing like women elevation church style clothes.
Yeah.
Would it have been okay?
Oh, you'd have to watch it. It's just.
I mean, I'm asking your opinion.
No, it's very awkward. None of it was okay because one is that what they're doing is like we got to have a warm up act to give people what they really want and get their attention. This is part of the problem.
And we can't do comedians anymore. Yeah, we got to get a guy stripping on a pole.
Yeah, and then he's from this major show. Everybody knows that show. You always watch that, right? You watch American Idol or America's Got Talent or like the whatever, all the nonsense. So he goes up there, he does that thing. One is that you're not going to reach most of the guys out there. The pastor was out of his mind to do it. Driscoll saw it. He wasn't speaking that day. He was going to speak the next day. It grieved him, and he was up all night praying. And then he started off his sermon, or started off his time of speaking that he was given, and he likens it to the pole of Asherah or whatever, and he says that the Jezebel spirit was here. And he calls him out, and then he gets down on his knees and starts talking, and then he walks back to the pulpit, and then the pastor who leads the conference, who's tight with Driscoll, that's why he invited him to this conference, says, you're done. Because he's like making, calling him out.
Like he's a kid.
Yeah.
You crossed the line.
You crossed the line, and then Driscoll goes, okay, I'm done. And he shuts his thing. Now, what a lot of people are not talking about is that the two had a conversation later and then got up on stage, I don't know if it was the next day or whatever, at the conference, and talked through everything. And Driscoll said, I was out of line to not have talked to you before this right now. And then he let him actually speak and do the thing. So he still stayed at the conference, still did the thing. Good for him, Driscoll, to call him out, even though Driscoll has always been about controversy. And he went back at Mars Hill in Seattle. He did that. He didn't do that, but he did all kinds of stuff that was
he pushed the boundaries of things.
For sure. And the things he talked about women and what wives should be doing in the bedroom, all that. I mean, he went off like
the Song of Solomon. Is that?
Yeah, like he did a sermon series on the Song of Solomon, and it said some pretty off stuff.
But here that falls under like right in the top three what we talked about: cultural conformity, fear of offense, right? So let's just of the three, this to me falls into that camp. Is this fear? Is like you had this bold moment, you kind of got shut down by another man saying, you're not coming into my house, rebuking me and my congregation for a decision that we've made. That's not what you're shutting it down. Stop what you're doing. instead of coming in and going, man, was I wrong? What was I doing this? And then it seems like, and I don't know because I haven't talked to Mark Driscoll about it, but like it seems like he cowered at the fear of offense. Oh, I must have offended him. I said this in a way that I shouldn't have. Yep. And in my opinion, he did exactly what he was supposed to do. And probably in that moment, I don't know exactly what he said because I didn't listen to it, but more than likely in that moment, you had like, I would liken it to Paul and Peter. What we just kind of like, I just kind of mentioned is, we got something that's going on in the moment and it needs to be addressed now.
Yeah.
I'm not waiting. Yeah. I'm not saying like, in the rest of the world or the rest of this conference or whatever, because now you can't just address a conference. You're really addressing the world. This isn't right.
Yeah.
And anybody that's here should leave and not be a part of this conference and just go home, because now we don't know what else is going on in this church or what else is, I mean, I would have went that far. So to come back, it seems like it fell under like this compromise, this fear of offense.
So that could be a take. I disagree. I think he knew exactly what he was doing. And I think he's kind of genius because Driscoll knows that he's not been on the map and he wants to be on the map.
You think it's that premeditated?
Yeah, let me tell you why. What I mean by premeditated is that the thing really happened and he probably had no knowledge that there was going to be this guy on a pole. And then when it happened, Driscoll was like offended and be like, oh my gosh. Because Driscoll's very much like, he wants to keep it man's man stuff. He's very traditional with that particular thing. And anything, I mean, this thing was definitely off any way you slice it. But also, it really would offend a guy like Driscoll in some ways where he says, like, as guys, are we supposed to be watching this stuff and be titillated or like inspired by it or whatever? This is ridiculous. But he was able to say exactly what he needed to say. And then he was done saying it and then was going to start his message. He was able to say it and rebuke publicly that pastor who was holding the conference. He was able to get himself in our collective consciousness in the church because now he's viral and he hasn't been viral since his fall at Mars Hill. And so afterwards, it's like he knew exactly, dude, that I would rather, what do they say? I'd rather... apologize than ask for permission.
Ask for forgiveness instead of permission.
Okay, exactly. And that's exactly what he did. He's a very smart guy. So he knew that, hey, man, I'm going to call this guy out. And then afterwards, I'm going to say, hey, listen, I should have never done that. Well, too late. You did it, Mark, and you got your face on the map again. Now people are all talking about him like us. So I think he was exactly what he wanted to. He's a smart guy.
Well, dude, that's pretty evil.
Is it, though?
Yeah. I would put that in the category of just about on every level, right? Deception. I mean, God talks about deception throughout the Bible. I mean, it's just like
he had his cake and eat it too. He was able to call him out.
But those are pretty serious well, I can't even say accusations because they are. I mean, that's basically saying, like when I hear that type of thing, I'm going, hey, anybody that goes to his church, you should probably leave. If he doesn't come to you and apologize for if that's what he did, to confess that and apologize for that, then you probably shouldn't be at his church. I would say that about any leader. If you have any leader that is purposely deceiving to put your name in the public eye, then you've totally missed.
I don't understand.
Well, basically what you said is that this was a calculated thing. He hasn't gone viral since he left Mars Hill.
Yeah, he didn't do it with like in cahoots with the pastor.
No, I'm not saying that he did that. But he did it in cahoots, but he knew what he was doing to put his face in front of millions of people to be like, oh, Mark Driscoll's relevant again, or Mark Driscoll, like getting his name in the public eye, right?
Yeah.
That's what I think you're alluding to, which I would consider evil.
Yeah, I think it was a perfect opportunity. He really believed what he said when he called this guy out. And I'm glad he did it.
You think though, but you think, yeah, I'm glad he did it too.
And then it also presents this golden opportunity to get his face out there again and to be talked about. Like, that's a win-win.
Well, then that's an insane amount of pride. Probably not a greater sin in the Bible that God talks about than pride. And this would be a guy that you would not want to follow on a Sunday morning or listen to every Sunday.
Yeah.
Even though he might bring a dynamic message, then that wouldn't be somebody that I would find. I don't have a skin in the game with this. I don't think it was that. I think it was he saw something in the moment that was terrible, and he cowered out of fear of offense. Now, whether that's
it was a day later, but yeah.
well, a day later, but whatever it might be, he should have left the conference. He really, because if you're really going to get your name in the book, you leave the conference. You say, you can take your money back, whatever you've given me, I'll send it back to you. I'm not fulfilling my obligation. And that's someone that would have taken a stand. Because you took a stand. You addressed the conference and said, this is morally wrong. Like, you should not be doing this right now. And then, so you take the stand, and then you cower. The only reason that you cower, I think, is just out of offense. I think that's really what it comes down to. And then, but that doesn't make it right either. So I don't know how much I want to follow a guy that's going to cower in the midst of offense either, because there's a lot of things as Christians that in the Christian world, this is kind of like we go back to like when we were talking about Lecrae, we got Christians pointing fingers, right? This, you did this wrong. You should have worn this. You said this wrong. You should have rapped about this. Your music sucks. It's the same thing. Listen, buddy, you don't come to my conference and rebuke my church or my congregation based on what I did. Oh, yeah, you're right. And then they try to bring some scripture to say, you bring this thing behind closed doors first, and if I don't repent, then you acknowledge, no, buddy, you got that wrong. That's for the church. That's for, let's go to Peter and Paul. Right? Paul was doing some things that were leading, like even some of my disciples in the wrong. I had to rebuke you right then and there in front of everybody.
Yeah.
And what he did was right. And so I think he had it right. He cowered out of fear of offense, compromised beliefs, and probably wouldn't be someone that I would stand and follow. So either way, I probably would go, probably not someone I'm gonna like. That person isn't gonna stand in the gap when things get hard. They're not gonna stand in the gap for the sake of God, right? The sake of like being morally in a position that people can look up to and follow. So I don't know if my point of view makes him any better or any worse or whatever. Man, premeditated is like gnarly on another level. Like that would be evil. I'd put it in the camp of evil.
It's interesting though. It's so tough because when you get to that level of status, right? When you get to be in the public eye, a public figure, and this is part of the problem with the church probably, is that when you get to be elevated to that level where you are followed by people, and this goes back to the biblical times and first century Palestine and all that. They were dealing with the same thing. I follow Cephas, I follow Paul, I follow Apollos, and then Paul rebukes him. Who cares who you follow? Like, knock it off.
Right.
We're all in Christ. And so, but we still do that today. I follow this guy. I follow Piper. I follow Furtick.
We do that literally.
Yeah.
Like Instagram followers, TikTok followers,
exactly.
Right? Who you follow on or who you're friends with on Facebook. I mean,
totally. Literally we do. Totally, yeah. And so it gets to this elevated status. And so recently, International House of Prayer, Kansas City, IHOP, as it were, they're crumbling. They're basically going to be probably shutting their doors. There's kind of mixed reports about that. Report came out in Christian Post that said they are, and then another one said, no, we're not actually. And but it appears that that's where they're headed. Because Mike Bickle, who was part of the Kansas City Prophets back in the day and all that sort of thing, he started that movement. He had other guys that came alongside as well. And then it was found out that he'd been grooming teenage girls and had sexual relations with some of them and doing all this particular stuff. And then the more and more women started coming out and saying like, yeah, this is the way he is. And he's always been a really touchy-feely guy and it's awkward, but this is just how he is. He got to a place where, is it everything that IHOP did, was it bad? Of course not. There's a ton of fruit from that ministry. And a matter of fact, back in the day, like I remember, bringing youth to that conference and One Thing in the early 2000s or whenever that was, and Missy Edwards and all this great music that was coming out of that influenced a lot of people. Corey Asbury, all these particular ones that came out of that camp. But what happens is that it becomes this monster. And then it also comes down to one man being a focal point or one man that we follow and everything goes. And then what happens if that one man falls? Well, one, the problem is there's so much adulation and praise and worship of this one guy and holding him up to this particular light that he becomes the untouchable one and he's not accountable. And so it plays into the same thing. Then we look just like everybody else, like a fallen CEO or president or whoever that does these morally reprehensible things. But with the church, the stakes are much higher. It just is way worse. And then now that whole thing is collapsing, just like what happened with Hillsong Church and Brian Houston, just what happened with Carl Lentz and New York Hillsong, just what happened with Bill Hybels and in Willow Creek in Illinois and all that. Ravi Zacharias destroyed his reputation and the ministry and myriad people's faith, thousands and thousands of people's faith, probably because they were the leader that was untouchable. We elevated him to this particular status and what have you, and then it becomes this thing of, and power corrupts and status corrupts. And so it's a compromise that we make in the church.
Well,
we should probably start getting into solutions because we're just complaining a lot, right?
No, and maybe, but but even like outside of the church, like if you look at, you ever see that movie about Nike and like the shoe with Michael, like Ben Affleck and Matt Damon movie? And
I heard about that. Yeah,
yeah. I guess maybe I shouldn't say. I liked it. I enjoyed it just from like they pioneered something with the shoe with Michael Jordan, and like all the shoes needed to be white, and they made him a red shoe to match the Bulls, and they paid every fine for every game for him to wear that shoe.
Wow.
And they gave Jordan a piece of the pie, which had never been done before. So they broke some barriers with that deal. But there's a moment, Matt Damon's character loved Michael Jordan, believed in him, and Nike would have never got Jordan to sign if it wasn't for his belief in Jordan. They specifically created a shoe for him. But he said in that, there was like a speech that he had when Michael Jordan was sitting in the room, and he said, they're going to build you up. And they're going to build you up so far and so high that you won't be able to withstand basically the idolatry that they're going to give you. And you're going to fall hard. And like he was predicting, and he goes, because we've been doing it from the beginning of time. And he took them through this, we want this kind of unassuming, a David, right? And a David and Goliath. Kind of came from really humble beginnings or whatever it might be. And we love this Cinderella story, and we love to push them and see them rise and to the top. And then when they get to the pinnacle, we love to just tear them down. And then we want to see you repair yourself, and hopefully, maybe we'll come. But that's what we do as humans in the church and outside of the church. And so I just thought that was like a really compelling moment. That probably like the thing that stood out to me the most on that. And I was like, yeah, we do that. We do that with everybody.
Yeah, we love to do it. Yeah, that's very true. It's interesting though. Jordan, he never really got too torn down. He's one of these guys that's kind of just remained up there. I think like the
gambling thing,
a little bit. It didn't do too much.
No, I don't think.
Can I say this? I'm watching The Last Dance.
Yeah, I love The Last Dance.
And everybody on that team is unlikable.
Everything on the Bulls? Everybody on the Bulls?
Everybody, all the main guys are very unlikable guys. They just are. Like, I have so much respect for
unlikable?
Just what it is. It's like they are so arrogant. And so they do it. Everybody knows Scottie Pippen, who he is now. He's on a rampage tour right now to talk about how, bad Michael is and how everybody always, and he had some things to be offended about with his salary and all that, what happened to the Bulls. But nobody even likes Pippen anymore. No Tippin' Pippen. That's just across the board of whether you watch ESPN or not. Like, nobody likes Pippen anymore. Rodman was just what he was. He was just kind of this real messed up guy, and you kind of felt bad for him. There's a lot of issues going on, a lot of psychological stuff, a whole lot of things, and wasn't sure if he wanted to, dress like a woman and all that sort of thing. And now, actually, everybody loves that.
He married himself at one point.
Married himself, yeah. But when he got on the floor, like dominant, 20 boards a game, the whole nine. So but you watch his thing, that was hard to watch, Carmen Electra and all that. It's like, okay. And I tell to have the boys leave the room, my little boys, part of it. And then Michael gets on there, and then Phil gets on there, and Phil's like Buddhist guy and everything. He's the calm one, Buddhist, and then it gets into all that. And then Michael, F-bomb, got my cigar, chilling, arrogance. I want to be known for my competitive spirit. Yeah, we got you, Michael. So unlikable. Like, dominant as all get out. Like, mad respect for his work ethic, mad respect for his skills, mad respect for all that sort of thing, but so unlikable. Like, how do you admire a guy with zero character? How?
But liked by who? You know what I mean? Like, and you wonder, like, I wish we had Jordan Peterson here to talk about this. Do you need to be unlikable to accomplish the things that you're set out to accomplish?
For the right reasons.
Well, no one liked Jesus. Hung on the cross. Right? They crucified him for it.
A lot of people like Jesus.
What's that?
A lot of people like Jesus, but certain ones did not.
Yeah. Right. But a lot of powerful ones did not. Right? Unfortunately.
Sure.
And so, but are you able... Like, so in some regard, you have to respect not being liked and being okay with not being liked. Because, you know, to accomplish the champion, like if you're just talking about basketball and championships, not Christianity or any of the other things,
right?
You got to have a different mode and a different level to be able to probably to be able to do what he did and what he accomplished. Steph Curry might be one of the only anomalies, but Steph Curry's doesn't seem like he can command his team the way that, like, if a Draymond Green, look at, like, even in The Last Dance, what did Jordan do? Jordan got involved, went to Rodman's hotel and started talking to him about his behavior and what they're doing, and he straightened him out.
Kinda.
Not from a personal level, from what they were trying to accomplish on the floor to win championships. What Jordan didn't care about what he did in his extracurriculars until it started to compromise his goal of winning championships. That's when he got involved. And what he talked about was your lifestyle and our championships are colliding. So if you don't get your stuff together, things are going to happen.
Yeah.
You wouldn't see that from you'd see that from a Kobe. But Curry's likable, right? Curry's your likable. If Curry had a Jordan or a Kobe mentality, Mamba mentality, could they have won 10 championships? You know, I don't know, but I don't think Jordan lets Draymond do what Draymond does.
No way, yeah.
Right? And
no
so
doubt.
on one level, you're like, they're not likable, but are they? Because they straighten people out. What, Steve Kerr? You didn't like Steve Kerr?
No, I'm not a fan of Steve Kerr.
You're not a fan of Steve?
No, not a fan of Steve
on the
Kerr.
Bulls. I'm not talking about today.
Oh, on the Bulls?
You said nobody's likable.
Yeah, he was okay.
What do you got against Cartwright? What do you?
No, Cartwright's.
What do you got against Horace Grant?
Cartwright's a super nice guy. I'm not looking for nice, by the way. Just in terms of admiration for who this person is, and I was just left wanting. I'm like, man, these guys are the greatest ever, but I'm so like done with it. And then Rodman comes in, and by the way, this is like 1998 at this point, and he's coming in. I'm hungover again, but I'm gonna bring it during practice. And Phil goes, ha 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 ha, laugh, 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 and then Phil just knows, I just got to corral this dude and get him to do what I need him to do. Okay, so genius, I guess. But how do you respect that? There's nothing respectable about that.
He's not running the church. He's trying to win championships.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
There's a difference, and I think like when you look at certain verses of like I think this is actually maybe a problem that we have within the church is that we so want our favorite like athletes or artists or actors, musicians. We so want them to be Christians. Because we love what they do on screen. We love what they do on the court or on the field. And I just want to love you more. And I could love you more if you would just profess to be a Christian and have Christian values. You look at, like, I don't know if you follow boxing at all, but Ryan Garcia, it just had a fight. And the guy that he was fighting goes, something's wrong with this guy. And Ryan Garcia is a professing Christian. It's like every other word, if it would be like me saying the F word and Jesus every other word. This mother effing Jesus and effing Jesus. I mean, that's basically like his rhetoric. It was like...
That's what Garcia does?
Yeah, so diabolical. Like, I wish this guy wouldn't say he was a Christian. It was so bad. But then he just came out, went on Patrick Bet-David's podcast and said it was all to knock this guy off his game. Act crazy. They had it all planned for months. And so but destroyed his probably reputation and walk to win. And so like when I look at like certain verses, like if we look at Matthew 6:24, do not serve two masters. Either you will hate one or love the other, or you'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You can't serve both God and money. So he's talking about, I look at like some of these athletes or I take this thing like with Ryan Garcia is I'm doing this to win. And he bet a bunch of money on himself because he was a way underdog, because he acted crazy, played the odds. He was like a negative 500 dog. So that means every $100 you bet, you win 500. And so if you're going to bet on Devin Haney, you'd bet every 500 you bet, you only win 100. Right? So he won like $12 million betting on himself. So he played the whole system, but he compromised his beliefs for money. And so I see a lot of Galatians 1:10. Am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or God, or am I trying to please people? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ. So at what point, right, this is the other side of the coin, is like, listen, God said I could wear my Guns N' Roses shirt. I really honestly believe that he has no problems with this. I don't believe this is going to be any eternal damnation for it. I think it's going to turn any kind of eternal destiny. And I'm speaking to this group of people. This is who I am. This is what God's called me to. So I feel okay with this. Tim Ross says he feels that when he swears, that it puts him in a camp with people that normally wouldn't listen to Christians talk because they're kumbaya singing, holier than now type of people. So he feels like I'm right to do this within God. But the vast majority of Christians will say, let no unwholesome word come out of your mouth, right? Something that Paul lived by. So even in the midst of Christians, it's like, did they really hear from God and saying it's okay for me to wear the shirt, it's okay for me to swear, it's okay for me to act this way, and I don't care what anybody believes? Or is it their ego?
Right.
And then what do we do? So what do we do as, 'cause I do want to talk about like this third camp, because we have talked for like the last hour and a half about the compromising church and the compromising beliefs church. And I don't know if it's so much ours, like the three things that I brought up, or if it's just, maybe you think that those things are real, but I believe those would be like really the top three reasons of why we're seeing so much decline in church. And we didn't even hit them all, right?
Right.
And there's probably 10, and maybe we should post this on, on our thing, and people can see if they agree or not, or maybe we should talk more about it. But man, what's this third camp? So you have. Let me back up. How would you define the first two camps? Because I want to hear your version of like the first two camps, and then what's our alternative? Like, where do we? Because you can sit on one thing and talk about Galatians 1:10 and say, I'm not concerned with what you think about me. I'm concerned with what God thinks about me, and I feel like God is telling me this is okay. Well, hold on, brother. You can take that to a really bad place, right? We can go World War II on it. Right? We can go real bad, like, this is what I believe God is telling me to do. We can go Jesus 2,000 years ago on it. Like, maybe those guys really thought that, I'm sure they had to think at some point there was heresy and that they were acting in the name of God to this blasphemous guy that was walking the earth. We need to get rid of him, even though thou shalt not kill. I don't know why that never came up amongst all these Pharisees and Sadducees. But so at what point do we go, don't care what man thinks, I'm only doing what God thinks, and then, but not, it's, so maybe I'll just tell me the two camps that you think most people fall in, and then let's talk about the third one. Okay,
so I think that, and I'm going to be short with the two camps, so we can spend more time on what I think could be a third way. Get your thoughts on that. One is that you got the camp that says that, we have to stay in step with the culture by embracing what the culture values. So the cultural values should be, we should be in line and harmonize or syncretize our values with theirs in order to actually reach them. So if for some reason, like Rob Bell said on an Oprah interview one time, Rob Bell said, because Oprah brought up, well, what about what was said in the Bible at this time and during this period? And he said, well, am I going to listen to what a guy who wrote something 2,000 years ago tell me what I should do regarding this now? Like, it was a radical, crazy statement coming from Rob Bell, right?
Yeah, you think that would come from Oprah?
Yeah, exactly. But he knew who he was talking to.
Sure.
And Oprah's audience is very calculated, and he's just compromised and threw away all authority of Scripture in a flash in order to embrace that thing. So there is the embrace of culture, and says we need to celebrate what they celebrate, embrace what they need to embrace. That's one camp. The other camp is the one that says, man, it's getting so bad. The culture's gone off the rails. We need to, just batten down the hatches. We need to stand and fight. We need to stand up for what we believe. We need to find someone who's going to legislate the kingdom of God for us. We need to pass laws that are so people will not impinge on what we believe and encroach on what our values are. We got to fight them, and it's us versus them. Either you're with us or you're not. And I think that those are two camps right there. And I think that that both of them are doing easy stuff. Easy stuff. One is like anybody can get angry, and you get fired up, your amygdala gets triggered, whatever it might be, and you're just fired up. Well, that's the easiest thing. I can get really mad. And man, when I get mad, I want someone who's also angry to represent me. And I want them to be just these total butt kickers. And I want to, it's like, that's the easiest thing you could possibly do right now. And then you've got the other ones that are like, I don't want any conflict. Can we all just get along? What makes you feel safe? What makes you happy? Well, you know what? That makes me happy too. And then you have the embrace. Can we do what Jesus did, where he would turn tables, but he'd also die for the people that he turned the tables over on?
So would you say embracing culture and anti-culture would be those, like, if you had to put a title on those two camps, would you say that it feels like we have a camp that embraces culture, and then we have a camp that's like maybe anti is not the right word, but how would you categorize the other side? So you embracing culture, anti-culture?
I'm not going to say anti-culture because I think that they do plenty of their own cultural appropriations on that side too, or compromises. I think it's more of a thing of, I'm going to put it this way: embrace culture, us versus them. Embrace, us versus them.
Who's us and who's them? Us as Christians
us
and them as non-Christians?
Christendom, Christian church right now.
Evangelical church. Or do you say even beyond that?
Yeah, there's fundamentalists in that camp too, but, like Christian, conservative Christian culture, let's say, or conservative Christians, we'll put them as the us. Maybe we'll do that, because liberal Christians are definitely going to be like, hey, embrace at all costs. Like they're really, there's not a whole lot of in between in this day and age.
How much of that do you think is political?
Well, I think
not politic, not like, oh, those are Christian politics, like political, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian. Like, how much of these are more on political sides than they are Christian camps?
I think that I think it's both but I don't think it's primarily a political thing.
You don't think the embrace culture is like a liberal culture? I hate to even bring this into this conversation, but I see these things as falling into more, like, maybe not more, but like in how you're describing it, it feels like political camps almost. Uh-huh. And maybe it's just a likening to a political camp than so much a political camp.
Yeah, well, I think it's the bent of those particular things. So the trajectory of that, they find themselves neatly in a particular camp politically as a result. I think you could strip away the politics and the politicians and the Democrats and the Republicans, and you have a particular ideology on both sides. But it's very convenient now, because what we have is we're fighting for our country and for what we believe right now. That's why we could very well have a civil war after this election. Is that so? Christians say, who else can be my spokesman right now? and you have a very, very loud candidate right now in the Republican field that is more outspoken and more risky than any other ones they've ever had, and they say that's exactly who we need right now. That's why Jim Caviezel said that I may have been Jesus, but Trump is Moses. And he said it with a little bit of smile, but also a lot of seriousness and a twinkle in his eye, because he's saying he's bringing the political camp into fighting for what we believe as Christians, and we need someone who's just a big on fire, big mouth guy that's going to do it, and no more compromise. So inevitably, it has become this in so many ways, and so again, at bottom, it's not a political thing. But it easily becomes that with the ideology and expresses itself in that particular way.
Do you think? This is just a side note because I want to get into like your third one. This is just. Do you think that we have? Right? It says every leader is appointed by God. But is it in a way that I'm giving you what you asked for, not what you need? Like when they're like begging for, begging for a leader, give us a leader, give us a leader, give us someone to follow. Oh, that was a mistake. Okay, hey, I gave you somebody, and so and you look at Jesus in his time was like in one of the hardest political times ever.
Yeah.
When he was alive, and he really wanted nothing to do with it, and didn't, for what we know in Scripture, that it didn't seem like he really. Until he physically got brought into that picture, and even then he was like silent. He never. We don't see a ton of scripture of him talking about other than honor, give Caesar what Caesar's, right? Like, because you're followers of me, be above reproach. Give what's due, pay your taxes, do what's like the laws of the land, follow the laws of the land, but understand who your Lord really is, And so I wonder, like, when we look at like our political climate and our president and our, quote unquote Christian values or whatever you would say, I wonder if like, are we falling into that camp of I need a leader, not that we're falling into it from the beginning of our existence, like nothing's really changed. That's why I think before we talked, or maybe we said it on the podcast, the needle really hasn't moved that much. Back out for a second. Look at the views of God.
Yeah.
No,
we're doing the same
you
thing.
2024 Christians or Americans or whatever you want to say.
Right.
We're the same people thousands of years ago that were asking for a leader. You guys haven't changed much.
Yeah.
So I'm giving you leaders. So are we supposed to say, don't worry about that and follow Jesus and don't really have anything to do with the political climate of today and be more focused on, and it doesn't mean like don't vote. It doesn't mean that these things don't matter, don't care about the unborn children. I'm not saying anything like that. But it seems to me that it's who is Lord? What is your response? And our response matters to everything that's brought before us. And if our response is I'm talking more about the political candidates than I am about Jesus, then man, I need to take a step back.
Right.
And so I think if like people out there right now are going, the majority of my conversations are Trump, Biden, the people I'm listening to are, either it's like, I'm always listening to the news. If it's CNN, if it's Fox, is it Shapiro? Is it, pick your other side of the aisle, whoever it might be, a Bill Maher. Am I way more into that than I'm concerned about my neighbor across the street that's struggling?
And that's huge.
Or, my church and how I serve other people. Yeah. Because it doesn't mean that you can't, it's like, who are you praising? Who are you worshiping? Who's your idol? Like, all these things are like little mini idols that we've come to like this reasoning that no, it's okay that 90% of my life is dedicated to, and I pray to God at night with my kids, and I might have a little prayer time in the morning, but that all goes away. But I'm really into this. This is really what I want to talk about. And dude, that becomes the compromise slope.
Yeah, right. And can you participate in politics, but at the same time be and I think people should, to some degree, absolutely. But I think it comes down to too is like, do we think that we're going to legislate the kingdom of God? Because I think that's what Jesus did when he tried to stay out of the politically hot times that he was in. He was like, hey guys, I'm not saying that stuff doesn't matter, but I'm trying to tell you that my kingdom is not going to be advanced by way of Caesar. And that's important. Like a really big deal. Don't get caught up in that to think that you vote and participate, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Do your thing. And Paul talks about it too. Yeah, you better, because they got a sword. Like, so it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Don't play games with it. And these leaders are appointed by God. But they're not how the kingdom is going to be advanced. Like, you can't legislate the kingdom of God. As soon as you do that, well, then why don't you just say, like, hey, this my hope is that someday we become a theocracy. So then everybody will legislate the times and appoint the times during the day where we all pray together. Huh?
Yeah.
Like, it's never about that. That Christianity is distinct from Islam and all these other ones in that we say, like, we want you to have this particular choice. It has to be real. It has to be from the heart. Don't legislate. Don't force this on to people in a particular way, because they're going to find out the hard way anyway whether or not their relationship with God was real. So the third way.
Well, hold on a second, because I want to bring in like a scripture to that, because I think it's a really good point. Yep. So if I was to say, for me and my house, what would be the end of that?
We will serve the Lord.
Right.
Yeah.
So do we ever talk about like that whole verse, Joshua 25:15? So I just want to read it. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourself this day whom you will serve. Wherever the gods of your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates, or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land are you living? But for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. So I think it's like, you got to choose. You know, right at the beginning it says, if serving God is undesirable to you, then you got to pick a camp. It's like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't be lukewarm. You can't say, I'm going to compromise on all these values, but oh yeah, I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian, but I've somehow figured out a way to have multiple wives because there were concubines in the Bible, so I've justified it that way. Or because it's in the Bible means that it's the desire of God. Mm-hmm. No, that's not it. And we get these things twisted. And it's like, here, like, who are you going to serve? Right? And I've got, Matthew 6:24, Galatians 1:10, 2 Corinthians 6:14 through 17, that all talk about your compromise. And Jesus says there can't be a compromise anymore. And so I really want to talk about this third thing that you're talking about, and having this Jesus-style love, or a Jesus culture, not to talk about like the group or anything like that, because we have to stop compromising and bringing our worlds together in a way that leads us down these slippery slopes. What I believe is this conformity, this cultural relevance. Jesus wasn't concerned about being culturally relevant when they said, why are you hanging out with these people, these scums of the earth, as if they were? Because he said healthy people don't need a doctor. Mm-hmm. I'm with these guys because they need me. Mm-hmm. I'm with these guys because they're willing to have a conversation with me. They're honest. Mm-hmm. If you look at all the encounters that I think is one of the missing things when you're reading the Bible, it's what I love about the Bible so much and how it documents the honest encounters of people. The rich man was sad because he didn't want to give up his riches. It's an honest encounter with Jesus. Mm-hmm. Love that. Yeah. The soldier, the centurion that comes to him, it's an honest conversation. The woman at the well is an honest conversation. Yep. The little blurbs that Peter said that we'd call him a knucklehead, they were honest. Mm-hmm. Even to the point where Jesus said we had to rebuke him as if he was Satan. Get behind me, Satan. Mm-hmm. The reason I think that Jesus was so apt to have those conversations because they were honest. Mm-hmm. You're not lying. You're not compromising. Yeah. You're not sugarcoating anything. You're just giving me an honest. And that's why I think he asked so many questions. Like when the Pharisees would ask him a question, he would answer with a question because he knew what was in their heart wasn't honest. Yeah. That's why I'm not hanging out with you people. Yeah. That's why I listed off a whole bunch of verses that talk about quit compromising. At least come to me with your honesty. Mm-hmm. So if you want to live in this political world and you want to have all these ideologies, I don't think people, they want their cake and eat it too. Mm-hmm. They don't want to say, I'm separating I'm not compromising. I still know who Lord is. Well, man, that doesn't sound like what's coming out of your mouth.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be able to have those honest conversations where they're going to be difficult, I think that's a big part of this thing. You talked about like, okay, what is the third way? You know, what is it? I want to bring up another scripture that I think ties into that. And, you know, Matthew chapter 5, verses 38 through 48. You have heard, and Jesus talking, you have heard that it was said eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. You've heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. You know, he causes his sun to run on to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And you only greet your own people. What are you doing more than others? Do not pagans do that? So his whole thing is, it's going to require you doing some uncomfortable stuff and not just going by a default setting, having those raw conversations like you talked about, and then being able to say, like, and I think this covers over a lot of issues when we're saying, like, how do we present ourselves in ministry? What kind of routes do we take? Do we want to just embrace culture and say, yep, come on in and be who you are, but also do whatever you want in your life because we don't really care. We just care that you come through the doors. Or do we do what Jesus said where the woman caught in adultery, he says, neither do I condemn you, after he tells people, hey, let him who is without sin cast the first stone. They all walk away. He says, I don't condemn you either. Total embrace, radical, raw embrace, having those hard conversations. But then he says, now go leave your life of sin. Because there's a both and, like radical embrace. So this is third way stuff. Radical embrace, and yet... But I'm also going to tell you what's going to totally mess your life up because I care for you that much.
Yeah.
I don't really care for you. I'm a freaking wolf in sheep's clothing. I'm a snake in the grass. If I go, come to my church, just come through the door. I don't care what you do. What you do on your own is your thing, man. You do you. Just as long as you're here, love, 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 love.
But in the beginning, that's how it should be.
Okay, yeah, in the beginning,
right, you don't need to clean yourself up to come to Christ.
Yeah, you don't
Whatever
have to.
situation you're in.
No, you don't. You don't.
Come to know Jesus.
You don't, but what do you do?
I just want to make sure. I know where you're going.
Absolutely.
I just want to make sure people...
And they should know that.
Realize that...
100%.
Dude, if you're in a broken spot... Go to church broken.
Yeah, and matter of fact,
don't think you need to clean yourself up first.
Yeah, and you might be actually cleaner than most of the people that are inside those doors.
Because you're coming in honest. I think that really
coming
needs
in
to
real,
be.
You're coming in honest. Do your thing. Okay, so, but then after a while, when I'm working with you and I'm ministering to you,
you're talking about an acceptance. I'm not going to condone. Right? If I'm coming in and I'm telling you I've been cheating on my wife for the last 3 years, and you go, "Hey, man." Sometimes that's just how it goes. You know what I mean? Or whatever. That's where I think you're like condoning.
Life is hard, man.
Right.
Do your thing.
You're not condoning my lifestyle. And there's a lot of churches that will adopt scripture to condone a particular lifestyle that you...
And cut out huge chunks of scripture because it's uncomfortable. We don't want to do that.
I just want to make sure that was clear to
everybody.
Absolutely.
Let's do this. Let's say, do you actually exercise, do I actually exercise compassion and self-sacrifice and real love when I'm looking at a person? Because that's going to cover over a lot of problems. If I always look at you, as a matter of fact, I love the quote, I don't know who said it, but like, it's really hard to hate someone that you'll sit down and have after you have a conversation with them.
Right.
It's really hard to have an enemy after you've sat down and actually talked to them and listened to them. And not just brought your own filter and not just turned it into an echo chamber and not just done that sort of thing, but saying like, I'm going to legitimately listen to you and your point of view to do my best because it's hard, but I'm going to do my best to like listen to where you're at. And I'm going to exercise compassion and know that I'm no one that can judge. I can't throw mud or dirt at you. Man, you want to talk about my own life? Okay, we could do that. And you're going to find out probably I'm a lot worse than you. Paul said, I'm the worst of all sinners. To be able to do that, to start there. So I'm going to keep it real simple with this whole thing. The bottom line about a third way, if we want to call it that, or approach that is different than the other two, is to say, I want to, at all times, as much as possible, think about the person across from me and think about what they might have gone through, where they're coming from, and what the very best thing I can do to love them well right now. And the best thing I can do right now is to not go back and give them a shoulder rub and say, hey, I think when you smoke meth, you were born to do it. It's just who you are. And at the same time saying like, hey, you smoke meth? Like, okay, we can work with that.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to put down the pipe right this second. Let's just talk about some things. Let's start here. What's your name? Okay. And then get into that thing. That's the heavy lifting of Christianity, is to say, I have to actually care about you. If you want to pray for somebody and actually make it matter, try this one. Try to care about what they care about.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, I'm going to pray for you and hopefully you'll fall backwards after I do it. You'll experience the anointing of who I am. But no, it's actually saying like, I want to try to enter into your pain. And like, what is it really that you're going through? I need to keep my heart tender, because everything in this life tries to make it harder and harder and harder. And so that's why I abhor the people that we worship in culture today, that is just hard-nosed, hard-ass guys. Yeah, all day long. Like, I want masculinity, believe me. All the beta male movement is terrible. But at the same time, where's the compassion? Where's the Christ stuff? Because Christ not only had a backbone and carried a sword, he also was the lamb of sacrifice. He was also rode in on a donkey. He did both.
Right.
We got to do both. We got to do both. That's the third way I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think where most people need to start is they need to start with like a conversation with themselves. I mean, because there's probably a lot of things that we're talking about that we've touched on, whether you're wearing a Guns N' Roses shirt, whether you're wearing a hat to church, whether you're on like one particular side of the aisle politically, whether you're living a lifestyle that might not really have Christian values, but you call yourself a Christian, whatever that might be. There probably a lot of people are like, man, I'm not listening to these guys. Like, because there's so many times, like how many times have people said, I hate that guy? How many Republicans, and I'll call it the Republican group, have said, I hate Joe Biden. Man, I can't stand that guy.
Or you can go to hell.
Right. And then how many Democrats say, man, I can't stand Trump. I hate that guy. Both sides calling themselves a Christian. Mm-hmm. And right. So you just read, if you have hate in your, or you know, that's where he's going. Like if you have hate in your heart, right, you've committed murder. Right.
Yeah, hardcore.
If you look at someone with, lustfully, you've committed adultery in your heart. That's where Jesus went on a hardcore side. So probably like this third thing, it starts with you. Like it's always started with you. And do the thing that, man, Jesus says, it feels like God honors honesty more than we fully understand. Like I look at all these conversations, and when your response is honesty, when you look at people that actually like become Christians, it's usually because they've had to face the hard truth of who Jesus is. Like they've had to, like if you look at people that try to disprove Jesus, like a Lee Strobel, or some of these atheists that have sought out to like disprove.
Lee Strobel is defending Jesus, not disproving.
No, but he didn't start that way. He was on a journey to disprove who Jesus was, or he was an atheist and became a Christian in the process.
Okay, yeah.
And now, right, is a defender of the faith. And so the people are brought to honest truth. When the road to Damascus, when Jesus spoke to Paul on the road to Damascus, he was faced, like he had to make a decision. Hey, are you going to continue persecuting people, or are you going to follow me? Which one's it going to be? Yep. And so I think we're not as honest with ourselves to start off. Like I love the third way and the verse that you talked about, but I think we got to start having some really honest conversations with ourselves and go, man, I know I haven't like physically harmed anybody, but how do I talk about people? How do I talk about my wife? How do I talk about my kids?
Right.
How do I talk about my brothers and sisters? How do I talk about the pastor on Sunday? What's in your heart? And are you willing to have an honest conversation with someone that you trust to say, man, I think I got a lot of hate in my heart right now. And I need some help. We always think of everything on extremes, and Satan works in subtleties. He doesn't work. And I think that's part of because you're lukewarm, I spit you out of your mouth. When you just cradle the fence and like, right, you can't serve two masters. You're living in the subtleties and you're compromising these little things. And that's right where our enemy wants you to be. Be a little bit over here and a little bit over here and a little bit right in the middle. This is where he lives. And we compromise our way, right? The road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? Mm-hmm. And so we want to do all these like compromising things. I think that's right where Satan wants you to be. Yeah. He doesn't want you to be so polarizing over here or over here. Yeah. Those are too easy to fix. Mm-hmm. It's the one that says I'm a Christian, that goes to church every Sunday, that has their small group that they host at their house, that says, I hate this political party, or I hate this group of people, or I hate these, right? This is the rhetoric that comes out of your mouth. And you go, man, it starts with me. Mm-hmm. And there's probably some people right now that go, I hate this conversation. Mm-hmm. These guys don't know what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. They're fools. Mm-hmm. I'm not listening to them. Everything I do is right. And if that's what you're hearing as we're talking about this stuff, because we grip the mirrors as we say these things, man, you need to do a heart check.
Yeah.
You better have a relationship with somebody. And that's why I think...
it comes down to the heart.
Yeah. And that's why I think getting back to all this is that who's the person that you want to run to when you come to that realization? Someone that is of sound moral character. Mm-hmm. You're not looking for the guy that looks like he's compromising on every stance. Mm-hmm. You want to run to the guy that goes, no, you've been sold out. You are sold out. And I want to know, I want to learn from you. I want to follow you as you follow Christ. Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I believe we need more of, not just in our church, but just in our world. The people that are going to call, if you're calling yourself a believer, a follower of Christ, he is Lord. We just gave you like 10 scriptures that said you can't be both. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing that I would think is like, how many people aren't thinking of their eternal destiny? How many people aren't thinking of like, what is this costing me?
Yeah.
Are you counting the cost of your lifestyle? Are you counting the cost on what you're doing every single day? Is there an eternal consequence for how you're living day to day? Like, that's a real conversation that you need to ask yourself. Like, these aren't just like, oh, ha, ha, Jesus said this, you can't conform with the world. And, he's like saying, dude, you can't conform with unbelievers in the way that you're partnering with unbelievers. Like, he was very real in the stance, and we're like, oh, that was old. That was for then. That was for that time. It's not for now. And I wonder, like, if we need to take a step back and start looking at those things and going, what does my day-to-day lifestyle look like? How many compromises have I made to bring me to where I'm at right now? And is there eternal consequences for it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who's willing to have that conversation? So, hopefully that leaves you some things to think about. And, man, I enjoyed this conversation. Thanks a lot.
Good. Yep.